Hello, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for your Gemini New Moon Deep Dive Special. This event occurs on the 10th of June 2021 at 11:53 AM Universal Central Time. Now I'm going to explore the Gemini New Moon and the energy that this creates over the next month, but also the event chart to see how all the positions are interacting with one another to help us understand in much more profound detail how this will pan out. I'll then go on to share with you forecasts for each of the 12 zodiac signs, and I will put some timestamps underneath. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be really grateful if you did now. Due to the various illnesses I've suffered over the last 10 years, I have got a little bit behind, so any support would be greatly appreciated. All you need to do is click on the bell notification symbol, and every time I drop a video, you will get an alert. Now, if you'd like to get your free daily horoscope emailed directly to your device each morning, and I do feel that my daily written horoscopes are very thoughtful, carefully written, then please click below. You can do so freely subscribe. Also, if you want to get your free natal horoscope to find out what was going on for you the moment you were born, please also click below. Or if you'd like to take advantage of my special offer of a 12-month forecast, a character analysis based on your unique data, there's 30% off in a special offer. Again, please see the link below. But on the screen, you can see that we have a gathering of influences in the sign of Gemini. And it goes beyond the sun and the moon, which is what a new moon is. It's when the moon and the sun, the moon moves to right to the center of the sun as we view it. And if you like, this Cassimi moment heightens the value of both. And in the sign of Gemini, which is the third zodiac sign, it's ruled by air, so it's very much about communication. But the third sign is very much about how we think, also how we speak, how we articulate our ideas. But you can also see that Mercury, the planet which governs this sign, is continuing its retrograde and is very, very close to this new moon. So I want to explore the significance of that. And then in House 7, you can see there's Neptune at 23 degrees. So that's squaring back about 4 degrees, 3.5 degrees to the sun and the moon, and about 3 degrees to Mercury. But we also have the North Node continuing its rewind in the sign of Gemini too. So that means that this chart has an ascendant of Virgo. And Virgo is very much about being proficient, organized, being of service to others, making sure that whatever actions we take have some kind of practical value. And the path of fortune is right on that ascendant. So that's generally a very bubbly position, because just like all those planets in the sign of Gemini, Virgo is also ruled by Mercury. So it's saying to us that we need to try to be as pragmatic as possible over the next month. But the gathering of energy in the 10th house, as you can see on the screen, also includes Venus. But that has now moved into the sign of Cancer. But there's a big Gemini vibe. So Gemini energy can be about siblings, neighbours, local interactions. It can be quick fire exchanges, text messages, emails. It governs technology. It's also about how we share ideas in an immediate way. So someone asks us the time. Yeah, sure, it's 10:22. That's a kind of quick fire Gemini interaction. But having Neptune in the 7th house of relationships squaring to the alliance between the moon, the sun, and also Mercury in its retreating position in Gemini can create some real issues, particularly around how we interact with the world at large, because the 10th house is very Capricornian. It's very much about work, obligations, responsibilities, goals, and ambitions. So I think this Gemini energy, as we come out of COVID, for many of us in the Western world, and I say that with great sensitivity of what's going on in South Asia at the moment. But as we come out on this side of things, what we're wanting to do is engage. We're wanting to mix and mingle. And after an initial splurge, quite rightly, we're now thinking more about brass tacks, how we earn money, what our roles are. And all of these are being affected by changes to technology. And Gemini energy is very much about that. So even though Mercury's in a retrograde, and will be so through to the 23rd, it comes out of shadow on the 26th of June, this right angle with Neptune is going to persist for some while. And therefore, I don't feel that this new moon is unfettered. Normally, a Gemini new moon is about being bubbly, bright, vivacious, having fun, popping around to see people, short journeys, lots of mental stimulation. If you've ever thought of starting your own blog or improving the one you've got, or going into your own technology business, or upgrading any of your devices or your phone packages, this is still a brilliant time to do it. But I think Neptune distorts the reality. So it's very important to get down to details, to distill things in a very clear, practical and airy way, which is the energy of Gemini. So we need to think carefully, because the snags can lie in the road over the next month. If we rush things, we're not quite clear about how we express our ideas, particularly to anyone remotely in a position of influence, because the 10th house is very much about bosses, it's about proposals, it's about negotiations, it can be about interviews, presentations, that kind of stuff. Now you can also see that Mars is at 29 degrees 18 in the sign of Cancer, when that's known as the anertic degree, so it's the last degree, very important. Well, actually Mars moves later today into the sign of Leo, where it's a lot happier than in the sign of Cancer, where it's in full, not at its best. And you can see that Mars is still broadly in an opposition with Pluto. So I feel that Mars and Pluto, when they are opposing one another, can give us a real desire to test ourselves out. So they're good for endurance. And in fact, in terms of sports activities, Mars and Pluto like this is terrific. The 11th house can be team sports for sure. But I think that this can make us more single-minded over the next month about doing what we want to do for ourselves. But all that energy in Gemini is also about how we connect to others immediately. So it's about our immediate community. So expressing what we want to do with clarity and understanding that things can go awry because of the retrograde to Mercury, so close to the new moon, and the fact the hazy, gassy energy of Neptune can distort what we're trying to do. And for many of us, I do think it is going to be trying to focus more on how we can re-engage with the world at large in a much more ordinary, usual way. So moving around quicker, much less fettered, less rules and regulations. But the chances are we are going to have to engage with technology. And even if you're someone who's a libertarian and doesn't believe in things like, digital passports and all the rest of it, they may actually come in bit by bit because businesses or aircraft or other countries insist on them in order for people to move around freely. So however you feel about that, I do think that that kind of technology and that kind of software is coming. But if you do have an opportunity to upgrade your mode of transport, do a service on your tech, back up any important files or photographs. If you have got an item that has been a bit unreliable, this is a fine time to replace it. But if you're doing any negotiation, listen very carefully, make notes, send an email back confirming what's been said to you, because that Neptune link can distort, and that's the key that we need to overcome whilst embracing the wonderful opportunity to mix and mingle more freely than we've been able to do for some while. Now, please stay with me, because I'm going to give you an individual forecast for each of the 12 zodiac signs. Now, for you, Aries, this is a great opportunity to get out and about. to interact. And for example, if you haven't been able to see your siblings recently, or there's people in your local community that you're fond of, and the only way you've been able to communicate is through tech, now you actually may want to meet up for a coffee and have some fun, and that's glorious. But your imagination can be strongly aroused by Neptune's position, and that could, quite frankly, see some gossip doing the rounds. And the important thing is not adding to it yourself. So if someone tells you something, try to work out what their motives might be. You don't need to even react to them. Just try to delve into what their true reasoning is for telling you something, because a little bit of malicious stuff could be going around. And the other thing I'd say to you is, if you're someone who consumes quite a lot of data online, I think it would be quite a good idea to give that a little bit of a rest over the next 3 or 4 weeks. That might seem paradoxical advice, but the more you physically connect with people, as long as it's safe to do, I do feel that you'll get a lot more rewarding pleasure from that, especially after all these months in isolation. But Mars is still in a very tender location for you, the 4th house. It could make you defensive. And if there are things that are being discussed about your career, which is possible with Pluto pushing you to stretch yourself and go that extra mile to achieve your goals and aims, you're probably going to want to do this in a way that feels emotionally comfortable, but lots of discussion with people around you who you can trust and rely upon will be very helpful. Now, Taurus, obviously the inference of this particular lunation is that you can improve your resources. You have a real appreciation of having firm foundations. You like to consume the good things, and everything about this chart is telling you why not. It's just, if you get together with friends and you've been really starved of that, because Neptune is squaring up Mercury and the Moon and the Sun, the chances are that you could imbibe to the absolute max. So if you're really robust enough to celebrate in a big way, eat lots of calorific goodies and not worry too much, you just want to live in the moment after being deprived of human contact and life's pleasures for over a year, then go for it. But if you're more serious about improving your financial situation, the fact that Mars and Pluto are in an opposition at the moment that this new moon occurs suggests you can articulate your passion to improve your lot with a great deal of conviction. Also, your ruling planet Venus is in your 3rd solar house in the sign of Cancer, so you can be passionate, but you can also be very charming, and that's a wonderful combination to get what you need. Now, Gemini, for you, ordinarily, the new moon is a chance to re-energize any strands that are ongoing, to start new things, and also perhaps to be a bit more single-minded in your approach. And you can do all of those things. It's just with Mercury retrograde so close to the lunation, just be aware that some of the things you do may take a few steps forwards and then stumble, and then won't necessarily go to the point of completion. But if that happens, don't beat yourself up over the next 4 weeks. I think you should see your situation as being quite fluid, but that doesn't mean to say that you won't have an innate desire to improve your finances, because with Mars and Pluto in opposition, I actually think your willpower to do so can be enormous. Also, this is a fine time to give yourself a glamorous makeover. Again, Mars and Pluto in your 2nd, 8th house axis is going to give you huge extra sexual chemistry. And it could be by reinventing yourself in some way that someone can take a fresh look at you and be strongly persuaded by what you have to offer. But if you do need to speak to anyone in a position of influence about a business idea, you're feeling entrepreneurial, you're feeling creative, with Neptune in your 10th house, having things nailed down in a very clear, understandable and very structured way will really stand you in good stead. Because if you have an idea written on the back of a fag packet or a beer mat, it's not going to be very compelling. And remember, Neptune can distort. So the greater the clarity you can possess and articulate yourself with, the better it's going to be. Now, Cancer, for you, there's a bit of an irony with this particular chart, because obviously Mars in your own sign, only for a few more hours, but it is there as this event occurs, is really giving you a great sense of determination and a desire to manifest your individual needs. It could be around relationships, but it could be that a relationship is not working quite as efficiently as you would like, because although Venus is now in your sign, and that can bring you more into the present, and it can also see some admirers beating a path to your door, with such a clustering of energy in your 12th house, there's part of you that I think is feeling quite nostalgic, maybe really rather sensitive. You may still be downloading or processing information or experiences from past relationships or past losses. And with Neptune in the mix, the chances are all of this can be amplified. So you're feeling quite acutely sensitive around any separations that have been, or you may still be mourning someone. You may not have realised you were. You may have thought that it was all in the past. You were absolutely convinced it was the right thing to move on, or the other person was, but actually still something could still tug at your heartstrings. On the other hand, you may have gone through a recent separation and you're still sifting through it all. And therefore, the people that you spend time with at the moment, I think really need to be those that you can utterly trust and rely upon 1000%. Now, Leo, having this gathering of energy in your 11th house of sociability, it doesn't get much better than that. And there's a really happy event for you later today, because Mars moves into your sign, where he's a lot happier. But we have to say that Mars, as this event occurs, is still in the very deeply psychological part of your scope, in a dispute with Pluto. So balancing your emotions with the practicalities of your life could be a big part of your challenge. And also, because the Gemini energy is asking you to think about the future, if there's part of you that's felt quite resentful about how much sacrifice you've shown in recent years, and I think a lot of Leo people really have been feeling a need to have a freer way of being, particularly in the wider world, because of Uranus really hitting its straps in the sign of Taurus, but being blocked in your sector of relating by now the retreating Saturn. I just feel that resentment could be pushing you to think really seriously about what your future will hold. But I think somehow or another it is going to be down to finances. And if you don't feel the finances are there to make the changes you would like, that could be dispiriting you in some way. And also shared finances. Someone may be a bit disappointed. You may have thought that someone may be more supportive, and they may seem reluctant to be so. And also with Venus in your 12th house, you're perhaps viewing all sorts of relationships in a deeper way, and it could be that you are moving on from some ties. Even if they don't end completely, you may be removing yourself a little bit because you realise you're not getting your needs fed quite as well as you could do. But I will tell you, with Mars being in your sign for the next 6 weeks, that's going to be a much more powerful transition for you than this particular lunation, in my opinion. You have to deal with this lunation, but Mars is going to bring fresh energy, fresh desire, fresh determination, and bring you into the moment. And I really feel that by even the end of this week, you're going to be feeling much more upbeat and more positive. Virgo, the gathering of energy in the sign of Gemini is all about your work, success, goals, achievements, and how are your desires being met in that regard. It could be that you've retired and your goal in life is spending time on a very enriching hobby, or your garden, or it could be with your grandchildren. Everybody has different goals, but I think that this particular lunation is saying that whatever your goals are, you probably do need to interact with someone else That's normal. And Neptune in your sector of relating, along with Jupiter, which is great having Jupiter there, that's all well and good, but Neptune in that right angle to your ruler Mercury, which is retreating. So just naturally, because your sign is governed by Mercury, every time it's in retrograde, I think it does have an impact on you, particularly around work when it is in the sign of Gemini. So I feel that you need to make sure that if you are applying for jobs or you're talking to a line manager, that things are really very clear. And that may mean, like I said before, confirming a conversation. Someone said something to you, don't take it at face value. Send them an email saying, dear Mr. Jones, thank you so much for confirming that I have every chance of being considered for this new role. I'm delighted by this and look forward to the appointment, the interview, blah, blah. That type of thing pins them, because someone could be a bit evasive. But it is true to say that with Venus and Mars in your 11th house of this chart, it's very much to do with sociability, and it may be a case of who as much as what you know over the following month. Now, Libra, obviously having this gathering of energy in your sister air sign, the sister triplicity of Gemini, is good, because that's a 120-degree trine to the energy of your sun. And the chances are that you could have Mercury and Venus in Libra as well, or pretty close. So the gathering of these energies is really giving you a desire to break out, be more adventurous, to travel. If you're very serious about obtaining more qualifications professionally, or even going to a higher or further education college to learn more, to gain qualifications, this can be a time when you're thinking about those opportunities very carefully. But Neptune's in your sector of sacrifice and has been since 2012. And just when these planets are conspiring to push you to be more independently minded and more free, and Mars is giving you enormous assertiveness in the sign of Cancer in your 10th house, and your ruler is in your 10th house as well, making sure that you can be subtle and charming as well as hugely persuasive. It could be that somebody in some way throws some kind of responsibility or obligation on you. But let's be honest about this, Libra. Will it be a guilt trip? Neptune square the retreating Mercury in your 9th house, but crucially Pluto in your 4th house. Is someone close to you kind of putting something on you about their needs? You know, you can't leave me in this situation. My mum used to do it at Christmas time. We always used to sit around and then she'd sit on the stool. Oh, I'll be all right down here. And of course I'd get up and say, come and sit here. You know, classic martyr behaviour. But more seriously, if there's someone who's doing that kind of stuff in quite a draining way, not letting you be the free person you need to be. For example, if you want to go off with your friends for a walk-in holiday, go and have that walk-in holiday. It will do you the world of good. And any supportive partner, if that's an interest you have, to say, great, have fun. Or if you want to go off to somewhere that's sunny, if it's, you know, if you're able to do it with COVID restrictions, and a boss is saying, but, you know, where's that going to leave us with the schedule? Well, you've probably been working over your schedule for months on end, whether it's at home or in an institution. Go and get that break. It will do you the world of good. But if you do need to book tickets, you're going to see a concert or a band, you're buying anything online, do be very meticulous. I can't guarantee with Mercury retrograde on this a particular new moon that something won't go awry. But remember, you are an air sign too, so that means that you can be very logical, you can weigh things up, be very discriminating, and use those skills of yours to try to fend off the potential for any glitches. Which brings us to Scorpio. Now, your two co-rulers on this event are still in an arm wrestle. You know, we've got Pluto, your modern ruler, in Capricorn, very much about your everyday thinking, about your resources. And on the other side of the heavens, you've got Mars in a rugged position, the ninth house, which is about you wanting to test yourself out. But of course, it is a very emotional position, Mars in Cancer. It is in its full, so it's technically debilitated. But that combination could make you very single-minded and quite outspoken. So if you do need to give someone the benefit of your opinion, I don't think you're going to hold back from doing it over the next 3 or 4 weeks. So what can go wrong? Well, what can go wrong is that the opinion that you base your point of view on may be flawed because the facts that you thought were right aren't right. So with Mercury in retreat in your 8th house of deeper analysis, the 8th house very much rules crime, mystery, obviously transformation from a spiritual viewpoint. It can be ends, it can be beginnings. So those transitions can be very deep and intense. Wow, this sounds like your zodiac sign. And of course, it's very much in keeping with the sign of Scorpio, all this 8th house energy. But the airy energy of Gemini is, of course, not. It's much more logical. But I do feel that if you feel that somewhere that you're invested, whether it's financially, romantically, business-wise, in a partnership, perhaps even a financial institution that you've banked with for years, or pensions that you've had, or insurances, and you know they just send you an email saying your premium's gone up by so and so, you haven't made a claim ever, don't take it. Get on the blower and push back. If in any way that you can defend your position about your resources, do so. But something may be transforming in your life, and with Saturn in your 4th house of emotion and Uranus in your 7th house of relationships, I think that could be the tender point that you're dealing with. Something's moving, you're doing a lot of thinking, there could be a lot of talking, and of course Neptune's in a very idealistic part of your scope, along with Jupiter. It's seeing you yearn for that perfect love relationship. And with Mars and Pluto in opposition, you need quite a lot of mental stimulation. So if your relationship is quite dull, you could find yourself provoking an argument over the next few weeks simply because you want a reaction. It might not mean that you don't love the person you're with, but it may mean that you're bored. And if you are bored, the easy thing to do for us all is to project it onto our partner and blame them. So this is an ideal opportunity for you to take the lead, to be more creative in providing some ideas about how things can be rejuvenated between you and yours. And Venus and Jupiter on this particular event are forging an amazing link. So there could be a rebirth around a relationship. Someone new and very dramatic could enter your orbit over the next 4 weeks for absolute sure. Which brings us to Sagittarius. All the energy gathered in Gemini is in your 7th house. That's about relationships, it's about boundaries, where you interact, where you compete. It's also about where we need to be conscious of other people's needs. It's not just about what we want from a relationship, it's about what we're prepared to give. And Neptune's in the 4th house of emotions. This suggests to me that however hard you try, somebody close to you may feel that you're not being in touch as much as you could be, or even if you are, you're missing out something, and it could be a completely genuine oversight. But any kind of interaction, could be around a property transaction with Neptune in the 4th house, is going to require a great deal of precision. And because you're someone who finds details often rather dull and boring, because you're someone with a glorious appreciation of the big picture, you love drama, you love facts and knowledge and travel. All this need to be very careful and check things and precise can be a bit tiresome, but you can do it. And also, with Mars and Pluto going across your 2nd and 8th house axis, in terms of finance, if you really, really want to improve things, they're giving you every support in order to do that. You can improve things with their help. And of course, Venus can be about money as well. And Venus is now in your 8th house, so you could benefit from someone else's generosity, business success, especially because it's forging a very helpful link with Jupiter. So maybe someone close to you is going to show a great deal of generosity. Perhaps a family member is going to treat you to a lovely gift, or give you some kind of financial support, or pass on an item that you'll really treasure. So there's a lot of goodness there, and a lot of chance to recharge your relationships in a positive way. It's just overcoming the blurry influence of Neptune and the rewinding influence of Mercury. That brings us to Capricorn. So Capricorn, you've still got that big standoff going on between Pluto and Mars. Pluto in your sign, Mars in your 7th house. The problem with this aspect, I can only be honest, is it can potentially see you overstate your position. And because of the gathering of energy that's in the 6th house in Gemini, which is where this new moon is, that's all asking you to be as humble as possible and think about how you can be of service to others, how you can make all the practical parts of your world work as efficiently as possible. But Pluto opposite Mars is much more to do with the ego, especially Pluto. But Mars on the 7th house can make you more aggressive, defensive, or assertive in terms of your interactions with others. Now, for example, if you've got a partner who doesn't pull their weight on the domestic front, which the 6th house influences, you'd have every right to push back on that. Why not? But if you use some tact, the fact that Jupiter is in your 3rd house of everyday communication, forging a beautiful link with Venus in your 7th house of relating, if you can just tone down the earnestness a bit and try to find ways to collaborate and cooperate, there's an awful lot more to be gained. But I just think with Saturn in its retrograde in your 2nd house, squaring up with Uranus, there could be frustration around any limitations for you to splash cash on enjoying yourself. And this truly is a time to be very realistic about those tiny but essential details that make up the whole. And if we reform each of those, we can actually make quite a big difference. Also, if you feel that you've got a bit sluggish through the lockdown, not been as active as possible, put on a little bit of weight, perhaps done some comfort eating, quaffed some calorific goodies. I know I've done all of those things. These are the things you can push back on now with the desire or need to feel a little bit more in trim, feel that your life is working more efficiently. And it is true to say, with Mars moving later today into your 8th house, I do feel that your desire to transform your life in some kind of major way is going to get stronger over that next 6-week period. Now, Aquarius, a 5th house new moon is one of the best we can have, because it's about joy, it's about self-expression, it's about showcasing your talents, it's about socializing, it's about laughter, it can be about kids if you've got them and their pursuits and successes. So all those things are given a wonderful boost. But because Neptune is in retreat in that area, naturally there can be some changes of plan. And because Neptune's square into that, and also the sun and the moon, I just feel that this is not a time to splash money without too much thought. So even if you love people and you want to spoil them, and maybe you can afford to do so, I would just ask you to check out your motives around what you're consuming. But if you can be very creative, work with your hands, use your ideas in a very imaginative way, and show that you can be the ultimate alchemist of the Zodiac when it comes to recycling, upcycling, repurposing things in an imaginative way, buying stuff cheap, but recovering it, all these kind of things are great ways that you can use the imagination of Neptune, but in an economical way. And there's no doubt about it, the 5th house can be great for your love life. If that's what you're wanting, to bring some magic into your love life, then go for it. But you're still dealing with the psychological influence of Mars opposite Pluto, which has dominated really since the end of May, the first 2 weeks of June. So what I would say is, when Mars moves later today into the sign of Leo, that can be quite tasty. By the end of June, it's going to go opposite Saturn, your co-ruler. But I do feel Mars is going to see you want to push out a little bit, assert yourself a bit more, strut your stuff. Go on, show people just how absolutely gorgeous and alluring you really are. Which brings us, as always, it's never last, well, it is last, but it's never least, is Pisces. So it's a continual theme from recently, Pisces, where you do have the energy in the fourth house, which is home, family, emotions. So even if you're going out, somebody said, but I've gone back to work, I'm a hairdresser. Yes, but you're interacting with people. And the key is how it feels. If you've gone back to work and it feels great, you're surfing the fourth house really well. But Jupiter, your ruler, is forging an amazing alliance with Venus on this particular event. So you could find yourself inviting friends or very close friends or family around to your abode, particularly if there's been a hiatus due to the lockdown, and you can be absolutely a magnificent host. But with Mercury twisting backwards in your fourth house, there can be mangled communications with loved ones. And if you are trying to transact a new rental or purchase of a property, things could go a little slower than ideal. Now, Mars and Pluto are in opposition still, which is asking you to balance where you identify as a team player, where you identify as an individualist. And I think because there is such a lot of sensitivity, the key is whatever feels right. You could still be very sensitive to what you're reading on the internet, on Facebook, messages people share, because Saturn's squaring with Uranus. I feel that any tenderness in terms of your own psychology is still there, which is why, despite the glorious influence between your ruler Jupiter and Venus, and the pretty good one between Mars and Pluto if you handle it right, this is still quite a tender new moon. So over the next month, the more you can work on feeling safe in your environment, spending time in places that are very comfortable and familiar to you. If you are with very close family or friends, or in your garden or in places of nature, but then being joyful, that will be the perfect combination. Thank you so much for joining me. Good luck and goodbye.